Okay, good. Okay, we're starting a new Mishnah. Very exciting, since the last Mishnah was the beginning of the parak. We are on to Lamed Ches Omid Aleph. Lamed Ches Omid Aleph. There's a little bit of an introduction here in the Rashbam to this sugya. The main concern of this Mishnah, this sugya, is the question of Mecho'ah. And we learned with Chazaka, there's two sides to it. There's the Chazaka, right? I'm machzik on the land, right? And then there is the what? It's actually three sides. There's 3 points. There's actually 3 key points. There's the Chazaka, the fact that I have to use normal usage of the land. There's the Taina, the claim that I bought it from you, you sold it to me, whatever. And then there is the question of Mecho'ah. Yeah, the question of Mecho'ah, objection, right? It can't be a Chazaka unless there was a possibility, a clear possibility of the other person being moicha, objecting, right? Limchos, what Mecho'ah? So the Mishnah, this is what we're going to discuss. How is and where is it? What is a situation when you can have an effective mecho'ah, an effective objection? And that's a critical question, because unless there's the opportunity for the person who claims to be the original owner of the land, to make that objection, you don't have a chazaka, right? Now there's a little bit of Rashbam here, 3 lines where it says masnisin. Can you see that? The end of the wide line. He gives a little introduction. I'm reading on the Gemora Eretz Yisrael. We say in the Gemora Eretz Yisrael is the Yerushalmi. Omer Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar says, "Afilu shteach sanoyos," even 2. Well, it's really kind of, I think, 2 little hamlets or villages or something like that. If you go in Shlomi Nevoru, like Shlomi Nevoru by Yardim Mafsik Ben Time, and normally Achsanya is like a host, yeah. But it seems to be here that it's like 2 inns or something like that. Shlomi Nevoru, like one's called Shlomi, one's called Nevoru. By Yardim Mafsik Ben Time, and the Yarden interrupts in between them. V'oimeid, and he stands, v'roya, and he sees Echon Machzik B'stei B'soda Shaloi, and he sees someone who's Machzik in his field. Eina Chazaka is not a Chazaka. Adshi Imoi B'oisa Ha'ir B'oisa Medina. It's not. So he sees someone be Machzik in his field. He actually stands there and he sees him across the river. And it's not a Chazaka. Adshi Imoi B'oisa Ha'ir B'oisa Medina. He has to be with him in that city and in that province, or in that country, whatever. That's what it says in the Yerushalmi. Rav says, Ika chazaka, the primary chazaka is hachnosas peiros, bringing in fruit, actually bringing in the crops. Even if he sees him plowing and harvesting, right, and all the other malachos that are involved in winnowing and things like that, right, and threshing and exactly, etc. He doesn't see him actually gather the crops in. Ain't a chazaka. It's not a chazaka. Ad shireu machnis peiros, until he sees him actually bringing the fruit in. Right. That's how it is. So there are two dinim that we see in the Yerushalmi. The first din in the Yerushalmi is okay, if people want to help this fine gentleman, then please do so. Well, okay, all right. We want to make sure that we are kind. So if anyone has anything, I don't actually have my wallet on me inside there, and make sure we have Okay, so what we say in the Yerushalmi is the following: we say 2 dinim. Number 1, we say that has to be in the same place. Now you can have the yarden in between, and you see, okay, remember that. And he says someone is machzik in the field. It's not chazak; it has to be in the same place, the same town. It's in the same place, the same town, right? And it's interesting this, because why should you have to be in the same place in the same town? Why should you have to be in the same thing, right? Why does that not be a chazaka? So what we have to see in the Mishnah, right? Right. Do you know why I did that? Because we learned on Shabbos there's a Ramah. It's a problem, you know that. And I mentioned it on Shabbos in the Shir. You have to practice what you because the Ramah says it can be more hatla naseh. If someone asks and you don't give them anything, don't want to take the risk. So it's a drive. Anyway. Okay, anyways, so let's see the Mishnah. The Mishnah says Shalosh Arotzos LaChazaka. There are three countries, there are three areas, three lands when it comes to Chazaka. There's Yehuda, Ve'eva HaYarden, V'HaGolel. Yehuda and Eva HaYarden and HaGolel. So we're dealing with Eretz Yisrael. Three areas. You have the area of Yehuda, which is the southern part of Eretz Yisrael, the other side of the Yarden, and the northern part of the Golel. Why is this relevant? It's relevant because Yehuda v'hechzik b'Golel. If a person was in Yehuda, v'hechzik b'Golel, and he has a chazaka in another part of the country, right? So the person makes a chazaka on land that he owns in the Golel. The Golel v'hechzik b'Yehuda. Or he's in the Galilee, and someone has a chazaka, makes a chazaka in Yehuda. Ain't a chazaka, it's not a chazaka, unless he is in the same country, right? Unless he's with him in the same country. The Bach leaves out the word achas. The same area, the same Medina, it's not the same country, same area. Provinces. Yehuda and Evar Yadin, they were different provinces, all part of Eretz Yisrael, maybe Evar Yadin, it's not, whatever, right? But they have to be in the same region. That's the first opinion telling us. What? Where?
In this example.
It is. Oh, in this example, I see, right. No, because it would be the same. It's the same din. It's the same din. The reason why I mentioned Yehuda and Golel, as Gemora is going to discuss, is because that's the chiddush. You know, what's the difference? Yehuda and the Golel, it's all the same, right? What's the difference with your north, south of it? It's all Eretz Yisrael, right? You understand? That's why it's a chiddush. Why should it not be a chazaka? Again. We've learned many times the principle of mecha'ah. You make an objection. Is chabra isna. Your friend has another friend. Everyone has friends, right? And because everyone has friends, sound is going to travel. The noise is going to travel. You're going to hear about chazaka. That's what we've learned, right? So why is it that if I happen to be in Yehuda and the person is living in the Galilee, or I have a field in the Galilee, and that's where he's making a chazaka, why should it not be a chazaka? I can make an objection. So the chiddush is no. There are certain regions and certain areas where we do not expect an objection to travel, news of an objection to travel. Make sense? Right? That's why, and therefore it's not chazaka because I'm not going to hear about it. Because I'm not going to hear about the objection. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says he has a totally different perspective on the whole din of chazaka and machar, how it works. He says lo amru shalosh shonim ela. They only said shalosh shonim 3 years. Ela kadesha yeheba aspamya. So a person could be in aspamya. Aspamya is very far away. Perhaps there are those who seem to think it might be Spain. I don't think it's entirely clear exactly where it is, but it was a year's journey from Eretz Yisrael. So it was a very, very long way away, right? There are those who say that Shlomo HaMelech traded with Peru. Did you know that? Some people claim. Some people claim that he's traded with South America. Who knows? I'm not saying this is South America. Anyway, the Yachzik Shana, and he is Machzik for a year. Okay, and they travel to Aspamia to let him know, and that takes a year. He comes back the last year, and he's able to just get in there before the last day of the 3rd year and make his objection. So Rabbi Yehuda says that's why you have 3 years. Don't do anything else. It's just 3 years because you're not going to be further away than Aspamia, and therefore you will have had a chance to object. We're going to leave it a long enough time that you must have had a chance to object to the person being machzik in your field. Okay, that's Rabbi Yehuda. So let's understand what this machlokas is. Let's see the Rashbam. Rashbam says, Shalosh Arotzos, Eretz Yisrael, la Chazaka. There are 3 countries, 3 areas, 3 regions in Eretz Yisrael in the context of Chazaka. And they are divided one from another with regards to the Chazaka of Shalosh Shonim, as the mission itself is going to continue to explain. If the owner of the land was in Yehuda, and he was machzik in Golel, the land was in Golel, and the person was machzik in it for 3 years without an objection. No one objected. Ain't a chazaka. It's not a chazaka, right? Because can Mefarish Tam the Gemora. The reason is going to explain the Gemora. The Stam Yehuda of the Golel keshas chirum domi. Yehuda and Golel are considered to be, the word chirum in modern Hebrew is an emergency, right? Keshas chirum domi means it's a time of emergency, almost like a time of war. It's like a time of war. It's like a time of emergency. People do not travel. It's a fact. People don't travel from one to the other. Why? It's not entirely clear. They didn't get on, or because there was a dispute between them. Therefore, and therefore, the objection of the owner of the land is not an objection. Right? Because there's no one who's going to tell the machazik that this person had an objection, had objected to his field, right? The Yizoi b'shtarin, and that therefore he should be careful with his shtar, with his document. Because there's no caravans traveling, there's no people going from one to the other. Therefore, since he can't object, even though he did not object, he has not lost out through keeping silent. And the person who's being machzik in the land should have been careful with his document, because he knows so the owner of the land is not able to object. He knows the facts, and he knows the owner of the land is not able to object. Now you got to think this through very carefully. This Rashi, this Rashbam seems to be very innocuous, very straightforward in a way to understand what's going on. We have to analyze it very carefully. Let's just do the next line because it goes together with it. It's not a chazak until he's in the same country. He's in Yehuda in one city. And this person made a chazaka in a field that he owns in another city. Right? Because since people travel from one to the other, should have objected. Right? And the fact that he didn't object, he's lost now. Right? So let's think carefully what's going on. On whom is the onus to take a step to do something? Yeah, the owner of the karka, the owner of the land, right? That's the norm. Normative position is that as a protection, we learned this right at the beginning, based on the Toras, as a protection for people who buy land, because otherwise they can always lose out if they lose their documents, and you don't keep documents forever. Chazal instituted a protection of cheskas gimel shanim, that once you've been somewhere for 3 years and no one said anything, you get squatters' rights. The land is yours. The land is yours, right? Of course, there are conditions. You can't just sit in a person's land and say, I've been here 3 years. You've got to say, you sold it to me, got to be a story, etc., right? But that's the protection for the lokeach, for the buyer. That means the onus is on the owner of the land or the person claiming to be the owner to defeat that. How is he going to defeat it? He's going to defeat it by saying, I took action and steps during the year to do something which meant that you should have realized I was out to get you. You should have protected your document. You didn't do so. And therefore, it's clear that you never had a document. And the whole thing is a lie. And it's all made up. And it's all right, because otherwise you should have kept your document, because I was making an objection, right? What happens here is, if the person who owns the land is in a place where he could not object because there is no facility for that objection to have any power, because no one, it's assumed, is transporting rumors from Yehuda to Galil or Galil to Yehuda, as the example given in our Mishnah, because that doesn't happen. People don't travel between the two. As a result, even if there were Eidim over the person who owns the land, who testify that he never said anything all 3 years, he never objected, never said a word, the person who claimed to be the owner of the land, right? It's irrelevant. It makes no difference. Because he has an alibi. When we turn around to him and say, if it's true that you really own the land, why didn't you get up and say something? He said, what's the point? He'll say back to us, what was the point of me saying anything? He's never going to hear about it, because people don't travel between these two areas. And therefore, what was the point of me standing up there and saying, hey, it's my land? And the fact that he has that alibi, if that makes sense, right? That protector, that answer, that response to give, means you have no reason to believe the person. You don't, meaning it's no longer effective. It's no longer effective, the chazaka of Gimel Shonim, that the person who has been in the land for 3 years, because it's all built on midolo nicho. He didn't object. That's proof that it's mine. Dad, you want to say something?
Yeah. Are we saying that the whole din of chazaka doesn't apply because the owner of the land would never hear that there was a squatter on his land? according to this concept?
That's a fascinating question. And this is something Toras deals with. For the benefit of the Olam, I will repeat the question. Basically, the question is, and this is the other thing, there's subtlety in the Rashi, in the Rashbam. Why is it all that way around? If people don't travel, then the news doesn't go the other way either. Yeah. So why don't we just say, instead of saying, well, he couldn't have objected, and because he couldn't have objected, therefore there's no proof that it's yours, because your whole ownership is based on midiloi michal. If I didn't object, shows it's mine. Just say simply, the reason why you can't be machzik is because the guy's not going to hear that you're in his land. That way around is much simpler, isn't it?
Yeah. Can we say there's no din of chazaka at all?
Pardon?
Say
then
there's
what?
No din, that there's no din of chazaka. It doesn't apply.
That's right. Chazaka can't apply. That would be the other way of understanding it. Chazaka is not a protect. You're right. There's no protection for a bar. That's true. But the logic of chazaka can't work by definition unless the owner is able to hear that you're in his land. Because how's he supposed to object if he doesn't know about it?
Isn't that what the Rashi was saying at the end?
Is he? Why? Doesn't say because the Balakaka won't hear about it. That's not what he said. He says the Balakaka is not able to object, meaning because his objection won't travel to your ears. The Rashbam is not saying, he could have said that. He could have said the reason why he has to look careful with his star, because he knows the owner of the Kaka is not going to know that you're there. It doesn't say that. Right? Doesn't say that.
He can't object.
That's not why he can't object. Why can't the Balakaka object?
Either because he's not there or because he didn't hear.
No, that's not what he says. The previous bit says that, that Kivan Deini Yochal Limchos. What does that mean? He can't make a macho, he can't make an objection, meaning
He heard about it, he can't get there because the borders are playing.
That's right. The point is that we're not saying, we're saying a few lines before, there is no one who will tell the machzik that this person made a machor. The implication is that it's only one way. It's not the other way. That actually the person who claims to own the land will hear that you're in the land. That's the clear implication of Torah. He will hear that you're in the land, right? But not the other way. That's the point.
Are we talking about a time period where they're still going to spread the news about Rosh Chodesh?
What? We'll include that period. Time of the Gemora, that was still happening. Well, before Til Hela was fixed again. Yeah.
Until the calendar was fixed. So therefore, could you not argue that if they're making Rosh Chodesh, then
that's a fair comment. That's a fair comment. People were traveling. I think that the point is Ein Shayoros Mutsuyos. Mutsuya means common, frequent.
So Rosh Chodesh is still Rosh Chodesh.
It's not enough. Because the fact that you get one guy on a horseback, for example, right, traveling between. Of course, people travel. It wasn't like a North South Korea. Right between the, imagine it like a sort of like armed guards at the border. It wasn't like that, right? There was travel between, but it wasn't frequent. It wasn't common. For a rumor to travel, you need to have to. Yeah, exactly. You need a critical mass, which by definition someone will hear. One friend has another friend, but you need a lot of friends along the way. Yeah, a lot of friends traveling to carry the information. Okay. So this issue is actually dealt with by Tosfos. This question of whether or not why it is one way and not the other way, the truth is, we can do Tosfos now. Tosfos on the Gemora, but it's just going on a single line in the Gemora, which is a line we've said many times, which is Mechor Shelo B'fonov Havyo Mechor. Right, you understand that an objection not in front of the owner is a valid objection. Right, that's what we've said many times. That's okay because chabra is carries the sound, right? So objection not in front of the owner. Yeah, basically the Gemara is going to grapple with the question of why should there be a distinction between Yehuda and Golil or anywhere else, even. If you say that you can make an objection in front of that, even an objection that's not in front of the person in the land, right? In other words, you don't need to be there physically present to make the objection. You have to stand by the door with a sign, by the field with a sign. Yes, you don't have to do that, right? Then why should it not work even outside, even from Yehuda to Golil, right? Okay. And the Gemora is going to explain what we just explained in the Rashbam, yeah, because there's no travel, etc., right? But the principle is that why is it that the Gemara constantly focuses on the person making machar and not the person who's being machzik? That the point is that it won't travel. It won't travel. The news won't travel of the objection, but implication is the chazaka will travel. And that's the question. Why is it that way around? So Tosfos says, we look at the last Tosfos on the Amud, machar shelo befonov v'chulu tema. He says it's astonishing. The b'chol duchte in every place nokat machar v'amayla nokat chazaka shelo befonov. Have your chazaka. Why do you talk about objection? Just talk about chazaka. That chazaka that's not in front of the owner is a chazaka or not, right? Right. Why it's the same thing? Should be two sides of the same coin. And the primary focus is chezkas abatim, is chazaka. So just say you can't be machzik unless you're in front of the person who is claiming to be the owner, or whatever, or you have to be able to travel, or whatever it is, right? Why focus on the objecting? Focus on the chazaka, which is basically the question we're asking, right? The Yeshlomis says Tosfos, the answer is l'fisha tam toloi b'machar v'lo b'chazaka. Because the reason is dependent on the objection and not on the chazaka. A person who is machzik in the land belonging to someone else, there's a noise, there's a sound. People go around, they are proactive. They go around and ask, what's happening to my property? That is the norm of human behavior. If you own a block of flats in Glasgow, you are on the phone to your agent in Glasgow. You're saying, what's happening to my flats? Are they being looked after? Have they been trashed? Whatever it is, you're looking out for your property. But the person making an objection doesn't have such a noise, such a sound. Because the person who's squatting in the land, he doesn't go looking for the objection. He doesn't go like, he hasn't got an antenna.
Hi, I'm here.
Yeah, exactly. All he's doing is using the land normally and probably hoping things stay quiet, right? He's not going around looking for the person objecting. The fichach, therefore, in chazaka, his chazaka is not valid when he cannot hear the objection of the person who's objecting. Because how's it going to help? He's going to object if it won't travel. You understand? So there's a fundamental difference between, it's not the same. It's not the same, right? It's not the same, even though it looks like it should be the same. It's like people used to joke to me, right? When I moved from Hadley Wood, when you go, it's a lot longer to get from Hendon to Hadley Wood than it is to get from Hadley Wood to Hendon. That's what people used to say. A little bit, people said that. People it's the same distance. Yeah. But it's not.
What, spiritually?
No, perception-wise. Because you have a larger area where there are more Jews and there's more things going on Jewishly, there's restaurants and there's shuls and whatever it is, right? And so the perception is, it's far out. It's a long way. It's a long way. Because people need to travel in the other direction. Okay, it's not a great analogy, but I think the point is that ostensibly, what? Exactly. There speaks a cyclist, but it is only uphill. The whole way to Hadley Wood is uphill. So it's called Hadley Wood, means high place. It's one of the highest points in London. Hadley Wood. Crystal Palace, it's like Crystal Palace, whatever. It's a high point. Yeah. Anyway, let us not get distracted. No. So the point is that you can have some. The analogy is you can have something that appears to be the sound should travel the same way in certain directions, but it's different. It's not the same. Here, there's a more simple reason. Because are you looking out for the noise or not? And the answer is yes, you are, right? A person who is being machzik in the land, okay, is the person who owns the land. Let's assume that it's true. You're squatting in someone else's land. The owner of the land is looking out for it. He's listening. He wants to know what's happening to his property in Yehuda. So even if there's not many people traveling, he'll ask. There, your example of the people on the Rosh Hashanah, or it's not Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Chodesh, the message. That's a good example of it, right? He's going to send a message, isn't he, with the guy on horseback, Rosh Chodesh. What's that? I hear you're going to Yehuda. Tell me what's happening with my land, because I want to know. But the other way around is not the case, because the machzik is no one's sending that message of mecha, no one's sending it in that way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? No?
It does.
Machzik is not listening out for the mecha.
Yes. Why should a machzik listen out for a mecha?
Because he just so really to his detriment.
What? Yeah.
To his detriment.
Yeah. He wants to keep his head down.
Yeah.
He's not going to go like, you have to remember that even though really in halacha, it shouldn't make a difference, because in halacha, if you're in a place where it's logical that he should hear the mecha, then as we've learned, you can stand where you are and make a mecha, and that's enough to stop the guy being machzik, right? But maybe there's a psychological element to it, right? That you think to yourself that if I don't hear the mecha, I'll be able to go to Beis Din after 3 years and say, what do you mean he didn't object? You're definitely not listening out for it. You're definitely not making like waves. You know, you're not doing that, right? If you're what?
If you're worried about the mecha, then you get the shtar first.
Yeah. If you are, what do you mean you would have kept the shtar in the first place?
The whole reason why you got chazaka is because I've already got rid of my documentation.
True.
So if I'm so worried about someone coming to claim my land, I would have kept my documentation.
Well, maybe, but you don't keep your documentation for 3 years. That's the assumption. Why would you keep your documentation for
Because
3
I'm
years?
confident that no one's going to come and claim my land.
Because you think they will, because you think you're lying, because you're lying.
If I was worried that was to be the case.
I'm not worried because I know it's mine. Again, this is a protection for a buyer. So assuming you're legitimate. If you're legitimate, you don't keep up to 3 years because what's your name reject?
Except that we've got a whole bunch of conditions, like he didn't go to a different country.
Yeah, because you went to a different country, then it's not. Then the protection that we want to create for the buyer is outweighed by the unfairness on a potential person who lost his property through theft.
Then I'll make sure.
Yeah, exactly. Then you do keep. Exactly. That's it. Right. Okay, let's continue. The Rashbam says, Omar says the Rashbam, lachloik bo. He's coming to dispute with the Tanakama. Veloima, and to say, de'enon chalukos lachazaka. They're not different in terms of chazaka. If he was in Galil and he made a chazaka in Yehuda, it's a chazaka. And even if he was in Aspanya, that is as far away as a year's journey from Eretz Yisrael, right? The hechazik Eretz Yisrael, and he makes a chazaka in Eretz Yisrael. Have your chazaka, it's a chazaka. Because it was for this reason that they gave a long period of time of the years of chazaka, zman meruba shel shalosh shonim, a long time of 3 years, kedei shir, to give enough time. Shimhoya ba'aspamya, but if a person was in aspamya, b'im yachazik zeh b'karka shalosh shana, and this person, if he was machzik in his karka for a year, right? Right? And in the first year, the coil, the sound, the noise that he has made the chazaka will leave and will go out. Right? They will go in the second year, and let the owner of the land know that the other guy's his property. And the third year will come and make an objection. Okay? Right? Makes sense? No, because we're going to. Oh no! 1 second. Let's just finish. We'll see. I think. And the Gemara will explain whether Rabbi Yehuda requires mecha objecting in front of him or not. It seems that he has to come to object in front of him. And more than a year, a person doesn't go from his house for more than a year's journey away. Therefore, the Institute, according to the norm, that a person goes for a journey. You don't normally go more than a year's journey away from your house. That's the rule. Okay. Now, this is the Rashbam says you need to understand that Rabbi Yehuda, in this opinion, fundamentally disagrees with the whole concept of chazaka. In other words, how it works. The Talmud Rabbi Yehuda lo mishum ditzlas shanin mizdar inish b'shtarim. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't. The reason is Rabbi Yehuda is not because a person looks after his documents for 3 years. That's not the reason. Elo kedem mefarish. Rather, it's as he explains, kedei sheyehei b'chulu, so that he should be 1 year It could be an aspamia. He machazik for a year. They'll go and tell him the next year, and he comes the third year. But Tama the chazaka lididei, the reasoning of chazaka according to him is the lo shavik inish dochlu ala are. Sorry, let's just explain for a second before we see this. Why is it Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold the whole concept of Tlashon and Mizdayan Shpishtori? We've explained until now the whole concept of 3 years is based on a svara. What is the svara? The svara is that people don't look after documents more than 3 years, right? 3 years they look after documents, not more than that. After 3 years, they what's it called? They don't have them anymore. That's what we said. That's why it's 3 years. It's just simply because that's the assumed time. Chazal said this is how long people look after their documents for. Rabbi Yehuda clearly doesn't agree with that. Because if he agrees with that, what does he mean? They only said 3 years, so that you could be the furthest away, and you can come back and you can make an objection, right? What do you mean? It doesn't do with that. It's because of 3 years people look after their documents. After 3 years, they don't. Therefore, we kick in with a special protection for you, a special protective clause, right? So clearly, Rabbi Yehuda must have a totally different understanding of the 3 years time limit. The time of the chazaka today, the reason of chazaka into Rabbi Yehuda is the shavik inish ta'achlu ala arei b'lo reshusei, is because a person does not allow them or someone else to consume his land without his permission. Even 1 hour and keep silent. That's chazaka according to Rabbi Yehuda. You know why chazaka works? Because if you squat in someone's land, in someone's house, they're going to straight away knock on the door and say, "What are you doing in my house? Please get out immediately." So why did they give a 3 year length? Why is the reason why they gave a 3 year length? Because sometimes the ma'arer, the person who's claiming that it's he's far away. He's a distance away. But if the ma'arer was in the same city, he'll be chazaka miyat. Did he be a chazaka according to Rabbi Yehuda? So according to Rabbi Yehuda, there's a totally different understanding in the whole concept of chazaka. You understand? Chazaka is, according to Rabbi Yehuda, very simple. Okay? It's based on a very, very simple sorrow. If someone squats inside your property, then you would object straight away. Yes. No, that's very important. You know about it. You would object straight away. And therefore, if you don't, so you're living in the same town, you're both in Hendon, and someone is in your property, and you don't say anything, I can't be bothered. I'll object tomorrow. No, don't be ridiculous. No one does that. No one does that. You put everything aside, you knock on the door and saying, he's in my house, get out of my house. And the fact that you didn't do that means what? Yeah, that's clear proof that it's not yours, and it really belongs to the squatter. And the squatter bought it from you fair and square. But that only works if you're in the same place. If you're not in the same place, how do you know about it? Says Rabbi Yehuda, 3 years. We lengthen to a maximum of 3 years, depending on where you are, because 3 years is the maximum length of time the person will be away. So if it is the case that you are in a 3 years distance journey, it's simply because it's simply to say that if you're 3 years away, then it will take 3 years for you to hit or to come back and object.
So how do you prove chazaka?
What do you mean?
Well, so up to now we've said that in order to prove that I've got a chazaka on this land, I'm 3 years being at work, and they didn't prove that's the case.
Right.
In this, according to him, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's got nothing to do with the period of time I got my contract. I chucked my contract out the minute I signed it.
Yeah.
And I've been in there for 3 days, and he comes and knocks on the door and says, "Hey, I want my house." You're going to bring anything because I've been in 3 days?
Yeah.
Documents have no place at all in Rabbi Yehuda's.
Seems to be, yeah. It seems he's not really interested in documents.
Yeah.
Well, it's just that yeah, the question you're really asking is, but he can still say, show me the document. Like, you know, where's this document if you're claiming ownership? It seems according to Rabbi Yehuda that if you come along and say, this is my land, then there's no way I can object to that. No? Then someone else has a better understanding of it. What?
There's an amnesty period. You don't claim the land back within 2 years. Never have to. It's not have to, it's whether if you
Slightly longer than that, 6 months. 6 months. Sorry.
No, it's the difficulty with Rabbi Yehuda is, I suppose, there's a number of points. The difficulty is, well, why is it different to, why shouldn't he keep the document a little bit? How is it that he can then turn around and say, I didn't keep a document at all? You have to say that Rabbi Yehuda says just people don't keep documents at all. They just don't keep documents, and therefore that's not a proof. The fact that you don't have a document, it's not a proof. Don't have a star, so what? No proof, right? And what is it instead? It's a chazaka. It's just simply a chazaka. And the chazaka is established by you not objecting. How long it takes me to establish that chazaka depends on when you live. Could be less than 3 years, could be 1 year, could be 2 years. That's review. Okay. Let's see the Gemara. The Gemara says, what does Tanakama hold? If he holds that objection not in front of him is considered to be an objection, then Afilu Yehuda v'Galil Nami. Even Yehuda and Galil will also be a place that you can the same thing will apply to Yehuda and Galil. That means to say, if I can make an objection even when I'm not in front of him, so why can't I be living in Yehuda and you in Galil and I can do the same thing? Should be valid. If the Tanakama holds that objecting not in front of him is not an objection, even in Yehuda, 2 places in Yehuda is also not valid. Because I'm not in front of you, I'm not here. Again, we understand this because we've explained it now we're going to see what the Gemara's going through what the Rasham's already been through. Rabbi Abba's name Rav. This is the explanation of the Mishnah. In reality, Tanakama holds you can make an objection not in front of him, and we rely on the fact, as we've said all the way through, chavra islay, that a person will carry the sound. And our Mishnah our Mishnah is at a time of emergency. Yeah? Right? You've never seen that in Israel. You've seen the signs, no? Siat Chirum. Siat Chirum is emergency exit, right? B'shas Chirum Shona, right? It's at a time of emergency. There's no way of traveling between the two. And therefore, that is why the Machal can't, or at least people don't generally travel, and therefore that's why the Machal doesn't travel. Well, Maishna, Yehuda v'Galil to knock it. So why talk about Yehuda and Galil? Why talk about Yehuda and Galil? Talk about any 2 places. Talk about other 2 areas. Why specifically these 2 areas? Hokamash is coming to tell us the Stam Yehuda v'Galil k'shas chayrim domu, that Yehuda and Galil are assumed to be like a time of emergency. K'shas chayrim domu. Even at a time of peace. What? Yeah, even at a time of peace, they're considered to be like a time of emergency.
So there's a specific criteria here.
What was that?
There's a specific criteria here. These 2 cities are deemed as emergency even in peacetime.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, exactly that. Even in peacetime, they're always at war. No? Pardon? Why though? Why?
Why is there?
Why? Because people don't travel between the 2.
Is it a distance thing?
No, it's not far away. Yeah. And it seems to be clear that people just don't travel between the 2.
So I had a problem with the Lashon originally, which I never asked, which is if nothing calls it Eretz Yisrael and Eretz Yehuda.
Yeah.
And we separated this to Eretz Yehuda, Galil, and Ever Yada. So when to Eretz Yisrael, we're assuming that those 2 were together with Yehuda, and there was no problem getting them between one another.
No, we're talking, I believe, after the Churban Abayis.
Yeah.
Okay? So we're after the Churban Abayis, and therefore,
Still a piece of
Judea is Judea. It's a different area, totally different area.
I think we're in the Roman occupation.
Yeah, exactly that.
So where's Eretz Yisrael?
I mean, like, it's very difficult to.
I said the joint up. Where's the south?
Yeah. What was that? Yehuda is the south. Yehuda.
Yehuda is including Yerushalayim.
Yeah, south.
You're saying from that all the way down to Yehuda.
Yeah.
And the Gala was.
It's not so far, right? I mean, Elat is Egypt, so it's not so far, right?
No, well.
According to most opinions, yeah. But the most opinions, Elat is not Eretz Yisrael, so it's not in the borders of Eretz Yisrael. It's not so long. It's not so. I mean, that's what I'm saying. You've got to think.
Not have those
Yeah,
pictures.
yeah.
Where does the color extend out to? What's the south? point of the
I don't remember exactly, but
But it's not, it doesn't go all the way down to Yehuda.
No.
They're not joining.
no, that's fair enough. There might have been a bit of no man's land, a little bit in between. But I think the key point to bear in mind is the key point to bear in mind is exactly as Eli put it, is that this is not Eretz Yisrael, because it is Eretz Yisrael, obviously, but the land of Israel at this time does not exist as a political entity. You have Judea and you have the Galilee, and they are two distinct regions. You understand? They're not functioning as a unified state. That's what's going on. What was that?
There is a missing piece, which is probably the shoulder.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, so let's see the Rashbam. So the Rashbam says, Micah Savatanakam. Anyway, you understand the Gemora? The Gemora itself is relatively straightforward. All we're saying is that this din, according to Tanakama, could apply anywhere, right? It could apply anywhere. If it's a place where people don't travel, you can't make a chazaka. Why? Because you're not going to hear the other guy objecting. And therefore, because you're not going to hear the other guy's objection, right? You can't say, I've got proof of ownership because he didn't object. Because he's going to say, I didn't object because I didn't bother objecting because I knew you wouldn't hear anyway. Of course I object to you being in my land. I just didn't say it because there was no point, right? And that's the say. And Yehuda and Gola are just an example of that. That's all. What was that?
Could you argue that if he knows that situation, that if the onus is on him to sort of place a placard or something to say this is my land, just to sort of make it known once he buys it? I'm just supposition.
What do you mean? Put a placard where?
He knows that there's a lockdown on communication. It can't
Right.
between one and the other.
Right.
So when the land is bought from the outset, he has to have some sort of sign which says this is mine. Everyone knows the town. Gossip says rumors will know this is land.
Put a sign up.
Sign up saying, hi, this is my land.
Well, why does he want to put the sign up?
So that everyone comes to case.
He doesn't need to do that. As long as he's using it normally in full view and he's not hiding away at night.
It's not all notifications.
It doesn't matter. As long as he uses it normally, yeah, as long as he uses it normally, right, then he can establish chazaka. Unless the person lives in a place where he could not make an objection. Then the sign's not going to help because he can't make an objection anyway.
No, but if it would take away the squatter's right to say mine. He knows it's mine.
No, but what do you mean? He can't make, again, it's not his, he can't unless he can prove ownership in some way. How's he going to prove ownership? Only by the other guy not objecting, but he can't object because he was in a place that he can't object.
No, I understand.
Yeah. Let's see Rashba. Microsoft Tanakama the Rabbi Yehuda. What does Tanakama Rabbi Yehuda hold? Ikasav Rabbi holds mecha shemoicha bala karka b'machzik. That a mecha, an objection of the owner of the land, objects to the machzik. Afilu shaloi b'fonov, even not in front of him. Kagoin, for example, sheshneim dorin be'erachas, that they're both living in one city. Umicha, and he objects b'fnei shnayim in ashuk shaloi b'fonov, right? And he objects in front of two Adim, Minashuk, from the marketplace. Shaloi b'fonov shel machzik, not in front of the machzik. Afilu even so, havya macha, it's an objection, it's a valid macha. The chavra islay, because your friend has another friend. The shama machzik b'dovazeh, and the person who's doing machzik will hear about this issue. And he should have been careful with his shtar. Or midoloi nisar. In fact, he wasn't careful. Hifsid, he's lost out. It says he has to be with him in one city, one area, one region. Since they're both in one region, it's considered to be a valid objection, even though they're not in one single city. Says the Gemora, if that's the case, even Yehuda and Golil as well. If he was in Yehuda, and he makes a chazaka in Golil to have a mecha, it should be a mecha, right? It should be a mecha. It should be an objection, right? And if he holds that it's not a mecha, Kediktani, as it says, the Hoya Yehuda v'hechasik b'Golil ain't a chazaka. He was in Yehuda and he made a chazaka in Golil. It's not a chazaka, right? Then afilu Hoya Yehuda. So, in other words, the other way to look at it is mecha shlevafonav is not a mecha. As you see, if his one is Yehuda and he makes a chazaka in Golil, it's not a chazaka. So it doesn't work in different region. If so, afilu Hoya Yehuda. The Hachazik be Yehuda, even if it's in Yehuda, and he's Machzik in Yehuda, be'er acheres, in another city, nami lo tihavi mecha. It shouldn't be an objection. Shouldn't be a mecha. V'amai katani ad sheheim Medina. So what does it say? Until they are in, has to be with him in the same city, same region. So the Gemara says the answer is in reality holds that objecting not in front of him is an objection. And therefore it says until he is with him in the same region, right? In the same area, because it doesn't not the same city. It doesn't have to be the same city. As long as you're in the same region, the news will travel. And according to that which you asked, even Yehuda and Galil therefore should also be an objection. Our Mishnah is B'shas Cherem, which means a time of emergency, which means Tigros. That means machlokas, basically. Arguments, yes, bein Yehuda and Galil. There is between Yehuda and Galil. The ein shayoros mitzuyos mizulosnu, and wagons, caravans, that means people who travel, didn't travel one to the other. And if he objects, the matter is not going to come to the ears of the machzik to be careful about his document. The hilkach, and therefore, it's not an objection because he's not going to hear about it. The since the objection of the ma'ara is not an objection, therefore, the chazaka of this one is also not chazaka. The Talmud, the chazaka gimel shonim koina, because the reason why chazaka of 3 years acquires, it makes you acquire the film, the matitoine machzik, because the machzik can claim amaylo mochis, the search shalish. Why didn't you object within 3 years? That's what he can say. The machzik can say, why didn't you object within 3 years? Here he can't say that. Because he can't object. Because it's not a valid objection. Okay? Right? So, therefore, the only question to be resolved is why it's specifically Yehuda and Galil. Since it's talking about a time of an emergency, the same halach will apply for all provinces, all kingdoms, where there's emergency state between one and the other. And this is what it should have said. All lands are distinct for chazaka at a time of emergency. Why is Yehuda v'Galil? There's the Mefarshi, some explain. Why does it talk about Yehuda and Galil specifically? Since we said it's talking about an emergency, why only Yehuda and Galil is not chazaka? Even Yehuda and Yehuda won't be a chazaka if there's an emergency. But the Rosh Hashanah, I don't like this explanation. Because if so, it should have said the same as before, the same phrase. Even Yehuda and Yehuda also, if there's a machlokus between them, different areas, there should be no chazak. And furthermore, this is what Rabbi Abba answered, that there was an emergency, sheyesh tigra, there's a fight between the kingdoms. Even though some tigra, but there's no argument between the different cities in that country. So Rashbam is saying that some want to say, the question is, even in Yehuda, this should apply. He wants to know that's Ragham's already dealt with that. He says that there's no machlokus going on between two different regions, therefore two different cities in the same region, right? So the question is only of the Gemara is, why do we talk about Yehuda, one region, Galil, another region? Why not talk about, I don't know, China and India or something like that? Why talk about these two regions? And the answer is that Hokamash Malon, top of the next Omid, Rabbi Abba is coming to tell us, the Stam Yehuda v'Galil afilu b'shas shalom, that it's assumed that Yehuda and Galil, even at a time of peace, k'shas cherem domi, it's like a time of emergency. She'ein shayoros mitzuyos mizuluzu, because there's no caravans from one to the other. People do not travel from one to the other, right? What?
That's the point.
Yeah, people don't travel one to the other. Avul b'shar malchiyos, for other kingdoms, other regions, provinces, iya kol cherem lo yave chazaka. If there was an emergency, there's no chazaka. If it's peace, there will be chazaka. To hashayoros mitzuyos, because people travel. And that which Rabbi Abba says, that we're talking about a time of emergency, this is what he was saying. Yehuda v'Galil, Yehuda and Galil, harehein k'shas cherem shal shamachlios. They are like a time of emergency of other areas, other provinces. That means to say that even if there's peace between Yehuda and Golel, people don't travel. People don't travel. Why not? Not because there's a fighting going, just because they don't.
There's just no bus routes.
There's no bus route.
Or there's no good roads.
Yeah, could be all sorts of reasons.
By circumstance.
Saying that it's just people just did not travel between the two regions. And the chiddush of the Mishnah is that you can have some places which are dependent on circumstance. That means to say, if Sudan is fighting South Sudan, then you don't travel. If Sudan is not fighting South Sudan, you do travel, right? That's one possibility. Yehuda and Golil, you never travel. Seems a bit antisocial, but you just don't travel. I think it was very difficult for us to get our heads around this because we think of this in a very contemporary way. Even when the Rambam went to visit us, you know the famous question, why did the Rambam go down to Mitzrayim? Right? You know the question, right? The Rambam writes in the other Chazaka, it's also to live in Mitzrayim. Where did the Rambam live? Mitzrayim. Problem, no? He writes himself, also, it's also one of the Niyat Chazaka, also. Right? How did he live in Mitzrayim? So one of the simple explanation is he had no choice. He was an onus. There's places he hints to this. The implication is, I think it's implied somewhere that he went to Eretz Yisrael. He got there. He got off the boat, right? He got off the boat and he could not stay because it was the Wild West. It was lawless. It was worse than lawless. Medieval period, in a land division, medieval period, right? With either you had marauding crusaders or you had marauding what? Yeah, a violent caliphate, 12th century. Yeah, well, or you have exactly violent, and you couldn't, terror. That was how it was. And that was already 1,000 years after this. Yeah. So therefore, that's how it was. Now, Tosis here asks a fascinating question. He says, "Why is it?" This is nice for people learning Daf Yomi. We're about to start Gittin next week in Hashem. It says in the first Mishnah in Gittin, the very beginning of Gittin, it says, "I maybe get Medina to Medina Eretz Yisrael. You bring a get from Eretz Yisrael. You know the middle of the Mishnah, right? Yeah. You don't need to say Funny Nachtam. Why? Because Mishum came to earlier Regalim, because the earlier Regalim people go out for Yom Tov, and they'll be coming, they'll be placed. They will actually go and be able to be Makayim the get, That means to say, it's established that it's true. That's what's it called? Even if the shliach doesn't say it was written and signed in front of me, you can find people who will be makayim and establish its veracity, right? And even when the Beis Mikdash is not standing, there are botei dinim, and those botei dinim are when the Beis Mikdash was destroyed, they didn't stop traveling, says the Gemora in, because they were botei din. And you had to go to find the botei din, and if you traveled around because you will need to go to Beis Din. How are you going to do this on the Beis Din? You have to travel, right? You understand, yes? So why is it here that we say people don't travel? It's a question on the Mitzvah. Different seems to be understanding differently. So this answers with a get, people will be Makayim a get, even from Yehuda to Golil. Why? Similar to really the previous Tosfos. Lefisho isha regila. If you want, I'm just 3 lines into where it gets now. Lefisho isha regila lechazer acha edekiyum. Because the woman wants to find those Eidim. She wants to find the Eidim that will establish that her get is what's it called? Is true and was written for her and Shema, whatever it is, right? Aval here, hacha ilav deshchichi tuva. Unless you got a lot of people traveling, lo'olam lo'yishma machasai. He'll never hear the objection. Sheina machzik rogel chazer imoicha Elohim lav. Because the machzik is not accustomed to look around and find out whether he's objecting or not. Therefore, it's not enough to have the people who travel for being oile regel or to find a Beis Din. Not sufficient numbers. You need numbers that will carry a rumor even when no one's looking for that rumor. You understand? That's the difference. There's a difference between a rumor that travels when you're looking for the rumor and a rumor that travels when you're not looking for the rumor. You get it? A rumor that you're looking for, like the Isha who's trying to find the Eidim to establish that her get was written correctly, that rumor will get through because she's going to be asking for it. You understand? He said, you just got off the boat from thing or whatever. Yes. You remember, I just received this get. Tell me, was it written correct? You understand? Yeah, and then you remember it. The guy will remember. Yes, of course. I know. I have a friend. I don't know, but I know Ruvain who saw it being written in Basin that day because he was there for a din Torah and he saw the get. You understand this type of thing, right? Whereas when it comes to a rumor that you're not looking for, on the contrary, you don't really want to avoid it. And it's us who want to establish that you would definitely have heard that rumor, whether you want to hear it or not. That needs a large number of people to carry such a rumor. It's the same as the previous Tosos. It's a beautiful, I think, way of kind of rounding out the sugya. It's a very important distinction. How Machor travels. How Machor travels. Okay, let's leave it there. Is that right?
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Continue. It's Hashem next week.
Thanks.
Have a good evening. Okay.